appreciate it. Tremendous people. The Senate plan is my complete and total support, and the House plan likewise is very similar. They're moving along pretty much at the same clip, and as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me, and I'm sure it'll have my support, Mike. Every Republican congressman and senator must unify. We have to unify. We can't be separated. We have to get it done. We have to get absolutely everything we can, and we have to take care of the American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, including debt extension. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country, because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day as president, and have been given credit by a lot of people, actually, even some of the fake news. Can you believe it? Which in this case, hopefully, isn't fake, for having done more in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing, in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people a day, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think of that. 2,500 through some days, but on average, probably over about a 1 week period, it's 2,712, they say. They're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated. And they're not from our country, but they're from other countries. But they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them. And we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right. This has turned out to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody. That was Trump's Make America Wealthy Again presser. The yield spreads are super positive, so I've gone ahead and taken a shot at dollar short here. But it seems like now that this is all over, there are a bunch of different things. Tariffs on Canada and Mexico for fentanyl and migration will continue while these conditions persist.
The other is the big one, is the reciprocal tariff executive order that the president just spoke about at length. This is obviously a huge deal, and it's been an honor to be a part of your team getting this ready for you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is big stuff.
Oh, so he's signing the executive order right now. And if you want to know, these are the reciprocal tariffs that are being enforced.
That's a 10. That's a good one. Look. That's a good one.
There's a few of these pictures.
Thank you.
Ah, there's a few of these pictures. Okay, there's China, the EU. China's 34%. EU is 20%. So that's probably why EU bounced, because it's slightly lower than what was expected. We're looking for Canada.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, 10% across the board here. Okay, I went ahead and sent a ping out to everybody in the trading group to come hop on and check out the stream if they want. Okay. Man, of all the days that I could be out and about and I have issues going on with getting back home and the phone is dead, it's like the worst of all possible situations. I'm like, I needed to be home like 3 hours ago. Man, I'm not upset because net, I'm in a decent spot. On the USD CADs that I've had, I did just get out of these, right? So across the board, if we look at the heat map, the reaction to the tariffs have been bearish for the US dollar, which is quite counterintuitive. That's not at all what I was expecting. Considering the auto tariffs, the 25% auto tariffs, will extend to nearly $600 billion worth of auto parts, computer imports, analysis of tariff codes listed in the Federal Register. Oh, 26% tariff on India. Wow. I'm just reading off the news here now. 31% tariff on Switzerland. Oh, the Swiss franc didn't move that much on that one. The Swiss were particularly worried about being tariffed. How about Japan? Yeah, 24%. Japan has a higher tariff than the EU, which is 20. Let's see here. Yeah, so they're setting the baseline tariff rate to 10% for all countries. So, again, this is about growth expectations, this move. That's what this is about. Let's go ahead and real quick activate the live sources so we can now see who's speaking in the YouTube chat here on stream. Let's go ahead and run a test. Yep, we're good to go now. All right. And I can turn the music on. Let's see here. Dakar, I looked away for 30 minutes and Apple went from, oh man, let's check that out. Yeah, Apple moved a little bit, huh? Didn't it? But you said it went from 222 to 214. Oh, that's what I was like. Maybe he's talking about the gap. Yeah, check that out. So this is the gap. This is where it's going to open tomorrow. Wow, that just erased the last month's worth of gains, or at least the last 2-ish weeks. Yeah, about 2 weeks of gains that Apple has made. Totally wiped away this recovery here. Ooh, and you can see the NASDAQ. NASDAQ got hit super hard here. Yeesh. Okay, so growth expectations are getting hit especially hard right now. Now that these tariffs are on. And we can go ahead and move this guy over here to the middle. I don't think yours shows aftermarket prices. No, that is the aftermarket price. That's let's see. Let's go back. AAPL. It's not showing the bars, right? Let's do. That's regular trading hours. Yeah, it's not showing aftermarket trading hours at the moment. Extended trading hours. Yeah, there we go. Now it's doing its thing. Now it's doing its thing. Yeah. So that's kind of insane. I mean, not when you think about it. I mean, I was expecting dollar strength still. So I was wrong on that expectation. We'll see if the US actually has negative growth and higher inflation hits over the next 2 months. And if those prints don't come, or they are extremely marginal, you could see the US dollar strengthen again. However, Trump does want a weaker dollar, because if you're going back into becoming a major industrial and exporting nation, or at least a huge manufacturing nation, you do want your currency to be weaker so other countries are inclined to buy your product. It's kind of counterintuitive with the petrodollar move, right? The whole idea of, oh, we want the whole world to be using our currency to buy oil, and we want to do a bunch of these mass exports. So you'd be fueling all this dollar liquidity from the US exports. But at the same time, you have this thing with oil that could easily send oil super high. So let's go ahead and check out oil. Let's go ahead and check out oil. Oil is down on the day, which, I mean, this is WTI, so let's check out crude. Yeah, that is down on the day. A bit counterintuitive, in my opinion, is if you'd think, oh, actually, no, I understand. Lower growth expectations means less net investment, lower demand, so you end up with less energy usage. But that would be, again, more future expectations stuff. Let's go ahead then and check out the forward curve. No, nothing super crazy on the forward curve. Well, when you have high supply, all this extra supply now coming out of OPEC, and you have lower expected growth across the board now that these tariffs are implemented, there you go. Alrighty. Gold jumped higher. Lower growth, slightly higher risks, higher risks of inflation. That'll do that. And it seems like the euro is holding in there. You can see the positive yield spreads coming in here. I gotta post this drawing here. Where was it? Somewhere, probably here or here. Man, I just paid a lot in financing. So it's this bar here. And the price was this. So yeah, with the yield spreads super positive, and price was down here, and I was checking things out, and I got hit with a fat spread. I had to pay like an 8-pip spread. I was like, oh no. But with the yield spreads going so positive, I'm like, dude, this thing zipped down. It could immediately zip back up, which is what it did. And now I had to pay the financing because it's been a new trading day. So now we'll see if the positive yield spreads hold up into this trading day and send things significantly higher. So I'm going to be watching things a lot more closely because I effectively had to flip my expectations now on the upside because these yield spreads just... Yeah, you can see all these up arrows, and now there you go. Super, like pretty definitively negative yield spreads now. And then you go to Aussie. Pretty positive yield spreads. New Zealand. New Zealand has been the best performer yesterday. Pretty positive yield spread development compared to yesterday. Same thing with the pound. Everything against the dollar has had pretty positive yield spread developments. And you can see New Zealand is the best performer percentage-wise against the US dollar. Man, it had a Darth Maul looking scandal there. But yeah, these are all now moving much, much more positively. And yeah, you can see the dollar weakening here and the yen strengthening. So we will not be heading up here. At least it does not seem like that. We will. The yield spreads are relatively still negative, but not as insanely negative. We'll see how the rest of the day goes. We'll have to watch how yields move very, very, very closely. I'm reading a few messages. Okay. Just had to triple check these messages. All right. Got some new information here. Oh, yeah. Trump already posted this on X, and I read it over here. This is just a little press bit of information about why tariffs work. Okay. Any other major bits of info here? Let's go ahead and turn on the financial juice squawk. Hello, Harold. Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm late too today. So we're sitting in the same boat, my man. DXY weakened relatively for the hour of the speech. Yes. Yes, it did.
Voice news disconnected.
Okay, we're connecting to Financial Juice, so if you hear another person speak, that is our friends over at Financial Juice. European Council President von der Leyen to make statement on U.S. tariffs Tuesday morning. Here, I'll just move Financial Juice over so you can see all the things coming out. Trump will respond to retaliation by other countries to ensure that the emergency order is not undermined. Exemption for USMCA compliant goods from Mexico and Canada will continue. USMCA compliant goods will continue to receive exemption from fentanyl-related tariffs. Now, from what I understand, roughly 60% of at least Canada's goods and import-export through the United States, if I recall correctly, and I could easily be very wrong on this, but 60% of Canada's exports to the United States qualify under USMCA, or 40%. So call it half, ballpark, half qualify under USMCA. So the tariffs aren't as significant on 25% of everything. %15 on Norway. Hello, Ivan. Hey, if you want to hop on the stream, go to the Plan the Profit Discord and go to the stream voice chat. So if you want to hang out for a sec, and that goes for anyone who's in the trade group, because I am here looking at this stuff in real time with you, just like you. Looks like the commodities are doing all right. Nat gas is lower here. Yeah, Norway, 15%. Every country got a 10% flat tariff. Flat. I'm actually surprised Japan got a higher tariff than the European Union. 24% versus 20%. Let's go ahead and check this out. Yeah, so Japan didn't like the tariff news at all. Not one bit. All right, let's go ahead and check out Europe. Europe is holding up well. France and Germany, while they did fall their equities, right? While French and German equities were falling into the day, they bottomed around New York Open and have been rebounding ever since. So we'll see how strong these yield spreads continue to hold going into the day here. But these are looking like pretty strong yield spreads at the moment. So let's go ahead and check out. So US yields, wow. US yields seem to be falling a bit. And no, there we go. Those are the US yields. So US bond yields rose a bit, bond prices fell. And EU is pretty flat. Huh. Okay. Boom. Will Norway join the EU? Man, I have no idea, but that question is directed towards Ivan. He'd probably be following it a bit closer than me. I'm not following the politics of the Nordic countries. At least not that closely. There's the guy in the Netherlands, the guy with the crazy hair like Trump. A poll said 58% no. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'd be. I'd be in the same spot. Yeah, quite a bit of Norwegians are keen. They sure are. Do. Oh no!
Fed's Kugler, paying attention to both actual and qualitative data. Trump, 10% baseline tariff rates take effect on April 5th.
Okay, so we got a slightly later starting date for the 10% tariffs.
Firm's March 25 quarter update, underlying free cash flow.
Yeah, he did bring down the cost of chicken and eggs quite a bit by allowing, because we have in the US, we culled a ton of chickens. So we
Federal
have
Reserve
less
Governor
eggs.
Adriana Kugler speaks in moderated Q&A. White House, higher tariffs take effect on April 9th. Ramelius Mar quarter gold output, 80,450 ounces.
So before I continue on that chicken and eggs thought. Oh yeah. He did talk about it a lot from what I know. He just allowed imports. To shorten that, he just allowed a bunch of imports of chickens and eggs in order to bring the prices down. That's all. Now, this is a delay. This is so the strategic stepping out of these tariffs.
White House, 10% baseline tariff rates start April 5th.
Yeah. The strategic step out of these tariffs, like one more week, about another week and a half, give these countries like one last final time.
Kugler sees Q1
right?
GDP likely to soften, but may also observe front-loading.
One last final push where they can go ahead and try and make a deal with Trump on getting rid of these tariffs, on having some kind of negotiation to get rid of these tariffs. All these countries, and by the way, it's not going to be Trump doing these negotiations. Trump now has a few people who were successfully nominated and are now in office who will be taking over for Trump. You can see how the policies are a bit more refined and specific, especially country by country. Well, that's other people doing the work and figuring out, okay, we need to tariff this country that much, this country that much. Oh, and that country, they need to get hit a lot. This country, they can just deal with 10%. So a lot of these countries are going to start picking up the phone and saying, Donald, my friend Donald, we need to get rid of these tariffs. I mean, we'll see how the EU responds. The EU and Canada, they had a more maybe I should use the word hawkish. Oh, man. Let's go ahead and see how the yield spreads are moving here. Yeah, these are still pretty positive, so we'll see how this holds up. But also considering the tariffs aren't implemented for a whole, effectively, some of the tariffs are implemented tomorrow, some of the tariffs are implemented on the 5th, some of the tariffs are implemented on the 9th. Yeah. Where are the trading opportunities from this tariff speech? Is it in commodities? Honestly, the volatility is so crazy at the moment that it seems like the best trading opportunity is going to be mostly short. Right, you can go ahead and check out the S&P. I mean, equities seem to have the easiest time right now in actually picking out a direction, right? Short equities in a few select countries. Europe seems to be doing A-okay at the moment, especially over the last few days here. So you can see France, Germany, EU 50. Europe seems to be doing okay here, which implies that the growth expectations aren't going to be so crazy. Hello, Omar. Nice to see you. And Japan, yeah, Japan is getting hit quite a bit. Quite a bit. So Japan's not doing so hot. Let's go ahead and actually check out Japan. Let's see, maybe it's way down here. Japan, whoa, 24, yeah, that's right, 24%. They are charging Japan 46%, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So that's why Japan is getting a higher tariff, reciprocal tariff, than the EU. Now, these are the discounted tariffs, so I'm guessing these full tariffs are the ones that go into effect on April 9th. So the EU, if they don't do any kind of negotiating between now and April 9th, my assumption is they'll get 39%. Japan would get 46%. On April 9th, they'd get these right here in the big column. Yeah, how are you doing, Omar? Any particular assets you want me to bring up? Same thing with you, Harold. And I don't know if, Ivan, if you're still around or not. Let's go ahead and check out some charts and get some recommendations here. Some charting recommendations here. So I'm feeling pretty all right. Again, because of the spread, my trading size and the volatility of my trading size got like super diminished. Yeah, I'll pay better attention to equities. Yeah, that's why I have these equities up here to watch. I wonder, we are seeing net at the beginning of the day here, some US dollar strengthening. So let's go ahead and check out CAD. Yeah, CAD's still holding in there. You know, Japan will get hit especially hard by the extra 25% auto tariffs. Ishiba said they want to do negotiations with the United States, and he will go and meet with Trump again. He will fly to the United States and have another meeting with Trump if necessary to try and hash out a deal. Hey, Ari. WTF happened to tariffs? Yeah, man. The tariffs are implemented, but they're implemented in a discounted fashion, and it seems like these full tariffs here in this first column from these reciprocal tariff posts come into effect on April 9th. So just like with the last two tariff announcements, tariffs were put on, and within 48 hours a week, there's a grace period of like, okay, do you want to negotiate? Do you want to strike some kind of a deal here with the United States? So we'll see how all these different countries react, and this is going to be an insane week, and we'll probably get a bunch of tariff developments over the weekend. So it's going to be a pretty hard weekend to hold over, just due to the risks of tariff negotiations developing further for all these countries. And for the big U.S. trading partners, especially if there's anything related to auto tariffs that get announced over the weekend, like any announcement saying, oh, yeah, the auto tariffs, we're going to go ahead and come to a discounted view here of the auto tariffs. Yeah, you can see DXY fell a bit. It's got a big fat bottom wick now on the day. Yeah, you can see it's slightly recovering here. So, man, a lot of moving parts. This is going to be an incredibly volatile week to trade. This is going to be a pretty hard week and a pretty hard weekend to trade over, because April 9th is 1 week from today. It is next Wednesday. So there's the rest of the business week here, the weekend, and yeah, there'll definitely be tariff developments over the weekend, just so that then announcements can be made at the beginning of next week on Monday, Tuesday, before the deadline of April 9th, when these full tariffs go into effect, right? The tariff charge. At least that's what I'm reading when I see some of these things that mention April 9th. So if we control F for 9, yep. Reciprocal tariffs will go into effect April 9th. Higher tariffs will take effect on April 9th. Prime Minister Albanese of Australia is speaking at a press conference. Let's go ahead and check how the Aussie might be moving off that. Aussie is, wow, the spread on Aussie is pretty big right now. It's 12 pips. Okay, so we're getting some news here out of Australia. The yield spreads are not necessarily improving at the moment here on the short term. Yeah, dollar is strengthening at the moment against Australia. So what is Albanese saying? Let's see if we can find the press conference that Albanese is doing. Yeah, nothing is showing up. Oh, there we go. Found it.
Anyone who is a political leader or who aspires to be a political leader to be part of that unity and stand with
Responding
us.
to tariffs.
Thank you.
All right. Oh,
Thanks, Prime
that's the
Minister.
Prime Minister right here.
Thanks, Penny. The Albanese government will do two things from this point onwards. Number one, we'll continue to engage with the United States to seek to remove these unfair 10% tariffs on Australian goods.
Oh, they're going to negotiate with the
We
U.S.
believe that it's by negotiation, by discussion, by sitting down and explaining to people the issues at hand that we can best present the case for Australia for these tariffs
Uh-oh.
on our program of expanding Australia's trade relationship.
There we go.
In
It's back.
this 3-year term, we've introduced a new free trade
You guys
agreement
hear
with the United Kingdom. That's already doubled our trade with the United Kingdom. In the case of beef, a 500% increase. We've established a new free trade agreement with India that's already delivering significant benefits to both our agriculture and our manufacturing sector, and we're on the cusp of another agreement to expand our relationship with India. As the Prime Minister mentioned, we've got a new agreement with the United Arab Emirates. Think of the United Arab Emirates as the Woolies warehouse of the Middle East. And we're getting every product in there, tariff-free, then you can get it to all of the countries in that region. On Monday afternoon, I'm talking with my European counterpart. We all know what happened the last time we had discussions with the Europeans. I think things have changed, and the opportunity to have further negotiations about a free trade agreement on better terms than have been previously offered now exists, and we should take that opportunity. In the last month, I've spoken to all of our major trading partners, and we're going to continue expanding our trade opportunities with them. I've also had the opportunity to speak to all of the affected industries by these decisions. The Prime Minister's outlined the way in which we are going to continue to support those industries, but in particular, push them out the door into new markets. That's what we've got to do. It's a changed world, but we have to push Australian companies out into the world. Why is that? Well, because we know that if you're an export-focused company, your profits are higher, but more importantly, the wages of your staff are higher. So we have now a renewed opportunity. People want to talk to us, we want to talk to them. It's all about expanding our opportunities to get our wonderful food, wine and manufacturing product into the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Don.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Paul, then Angira, then we'll sort of go to and from.
All right. Now the Prime Minister's taking questions.
How Australians perceive the relationship, what are those consequences? And given we've got the
Oh, I can hardly hear the questions.
that a relatively good deal or the best we could have got.
There's no doubt that there's no one who's got a better deal, and people will see that themselves. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. It's very clear that President Trump was determined to, we have made very strong representations. Ministers, our ambassador and people in the embassy, people at departmental level, we've used every asset at our disposal. But what it does mean, it's a bit like what I was saying yesterday. Steel and aluminium, there's not more steel or aluminium being produced in the United States today than there was in February. If you have a tariff across the board, that has a comparatively neutral position for imports coming in, and indeed some countries have higher tariffs. Canada, for example, which is another major exporter of aluminium to the United States. This position is the minimum is 10%. Norfolk Island, interestingly, is I think 29%. I'm not sure what Norfolk Island major exports are to the United States and why it's been singled out, but it has on the table which is there. But it is across the board. It's quite clear that the Trump administration was determined to do this. And Garrett.
And we've just ruled out any changes to your World Cup social media laws or the news bargaining code, but we do know that these tech giants are lobbying to Australia's position. What are you willing to do beyond what's already been committed?
That stream is bunk. That's the only stream that's up. Look, I just loaded up the stream and it's already freezing. Here, let's try refreshing it. Wow. Come on. The one stream that has Albanese actually speaking and it's hitching. And we know it's not my internet because I just loaded up another stream and it just immediately started working. All right, let's turn the music back on here. Yeah, not sure what's going on with their stream at the moment. Wow. Let's see.
Why are they against men and women's sports? Why are they against deporting foreign terrorists from American?
Are they speaking right now at the White House? No, that was streamed like 40 minutes ago. Oh, yeah, 6 days ago, call federal election. Yeah, so the live stream is now. Let's see here. How about CNBC?
Are not
There we go.
unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted. President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be 0, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations' partnership. This is not the act of a friend. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. This is why our government will not be seeking to impose reciprocal tariffs. We will not join a race to the bottom that leads to higher prices and slower growth. We will stand up for Australia. We will continue to make the strongest case for these unjustified tariffs to be removed from our exporters. Our existing free trade agreement with the United States contains dispute resolution mechanisms. We want to resolve this issue without resorting to using these, as we do support continued constructive engagement with our friends in the United States. Our shared history, our friendship, our alliance, these are all bigger than a poor decision. But the Australian people have every right to view this action by the Trump administration as undermining our free and fair trading relationship and counter to the shared values that have always been at the heart of our two nations' long-standing friendship. This will have consequences for how Australians see this relationship. These are uncertain times, but Australians can be absolutely certain of this. Our government will always stand up for Australian jobs, Australian industry, Australian consumers, and Australian values. That is why we've been crystal clear with the United States about what is not up for negotiation. Australia is a great trading nation. 1 in 4 of our jobs depends upon unexpected, but let me be clear,
Whoa,
they are totally
changed the mic.
unwarranted. President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be 0, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. This is why our government will not be seeking to impose reciprocal tariffs. We will not join a race to the bottom that leads to higher prices and slower growth. We will stand up for Australia. We will continue to make the strongest case for these unjustified tariffs to be removed from our exporters. Our existing free trade agreement with the United States contains dispute resolution mechanisms. We want to resolve this issue without resorting to using these, as we do support continued constructive engagement with our friends in the United States. Our shared history, our friendship, our alliance, these are all bigger than a poor decision. But the Australian people have every right to view this action by the Trump administration as undermining our free and fair trading relationship and counter to the shared values that have always been at the heart of our two nations' long-standing friendship. This will have consequences for how Australians see this relationship. These are uncertain times, but Australians can be absolutely certain of this. Our government will always stand up for Australian jobs, Australian industry, Australian consumers, and Australian values.
The Australian stock market has been doing pretty well on the hour since Albanese started speaking.
Australia is a great trading nation. 1 in 4 of our jobs depends upon trade. But we'll never trade away the things which make us the best country in the world. The Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme is an Australian institution, a proud Labor creation that my government has built on. The investments we're making in the PBS mean that life-saving and life-changing medicines, which would otherwise cost people thousands of dollars, will be no more than $25 a script. Under Labor, that will never be up for negotiation. We don't want our health system to be more American, we only want it to be more Australian. The same is true for agriculture. We have made it very clear to the United States that we will not compromise on biosecurity. We will not weaken the measures that protect our farmers and producers from the risks of disease or contamination. Indeed, we've made it a priority to strengthen biosecurity, because one of the things that makes Australian food and fibre the best in the world is that people everywhere know that it stands for quality, it also stands for safety. Another key point was technology. Our government stands by our media bargaining code. We strongly support local content in streaming services so Australian stories stay on Australian screens. And we have no intention of repealing the world-leading legislation that we passed with overwhelming support that set the minimum age for social media at 16. That policy is about what's best for Australian children and Australian parents.
Australians are somewhat upset about that.
We stand up for Australia's interests.
Underestimation.
While we have an important trading relationship with the United States, it's important to put this in some perspective. It only accounts for less than 5% of our exports. Many other countries will be hit much harder by today's decision than Australia. And because it is across the board, with no exemptions of course, there's an argument actually about comparative impact of this decision made by President Trump. That puts us in a position where I think no nation is better prepared than Australia for what has occurred today. For 3 years, my government has been working to make Australia's economy more resilient and our exports more diverse. We've deepened our economic engagement in Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia and India, the fastest growing region of the world in human history. We are implementing our Southeast Asia economic strategy, developed by Nicholas Moore, and I thank him and give a shout out to him yet again for the extraordinary work that he did on behalf of the nation that he loves. Our roadmap for economic engagement with India is what we launched here in Melbourne at Monash University just a month ago. This is about delivering for Australian businesses in what will be the third largest economy in the world. We've signed a new trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates, a tribute to the guy on my left here for the nature of that. What that has done is open up the markets of the Middle East through the UAE. We're boosting exports of Australian beef and red meat, expanding trade with the UK, European Union and Indonesia. And of course we've cleared away over $20 billion in trade impediments with China. Backing local manufacturing with our Future Made in Australia plan. Investing in the skills, technology and energy to make more things here and stand on our own 2 feet. We're building on these actions today. First, we will strengthen our anti-dumping regime to safeguard key sectors like steel, aluminium and manufacturing against unfair competition. Second, we will provide $50 million to affected sectors, particularly through peak bodies such as the National Farmers Federation, to secure and grow new markets for their world-class products. This work will be backed by 5 new business and investment missions to priority markets within the first 100 days of our second term. Third, we will establish a new economic resilience program through our National Reconstruction Fund. This will provide $1 billion in zero-interest loans for firms to capitalise on new export opportunities. Fourth, just as we are already encouraging more people to buy Australian, our Labor government will buy Australian too. This comes on the back of the announcements that I made in Port Kembla, for example, about procurement.
Okay, this is important. On gold, Trump tariffs exempt gold in the tariffs. Check that out. Trump tariffs exempt gold.
Minerals Strategic Reserve. I'll have more to say on this over coming weeks. The world has thrown a lot at Australia over the past few years. We had COVID, the long tail of COVID, and then we had the impact of global inflation. We cannot control what challenges we face, but we can determine how we respond. Australia will always respond by defending our national interest. And our government will always deal with global challenges the Australian way, standing up for our national interest, backing our people and building for the future. We'll hear from the Foreign Minister, then the Trade Minister, then happy to take a few questions.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. It's good to be here to respond to this announcement with both you and my colleague, Senator Farrell. Well, today's decision underlines that we do live in an uncertain world, and we understand that many Australians find that challenging. But what I would emphasise is that our country faces that increasingly uncertain world with independence, with resilience and with more choices. And this is what we have been focused on over these last 3 years, doing the hard work of building common ground in more diversified partnerships. Not just relying on what we've done in the past to keep working in a different world. So we are deepening our cooperation with traditional partners and allies. But we have also, as the Prime Minister has outlined, strengthened Australia's relationships across our region, where our prosperity and our security are most on the line. With India, that has overtaken the United States as our fourth largest.
All right. There's a lot of other news going on, so we'll go ahead and move on to some of the other news that's coming down the wire here. All right. Evercore on biotech and tariff announcements. In a fact sheet from the White House, there's a language suggesting that pharma may not be subject to the reciprocal tariffs just announced. Copper, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, lumber. Some goods will not be subject to reciprocal tariffs. All articles that may become subject to future Section 232 tariffs. Bullion, so gold bullion. Energy and other certain minerals that are not available to the United States, so some rare earths. 46% tariff on Vietnam and 49% tariff on Cambodia is an absolute bomb. So many companies moved all their production there to get out of China. So we know a lot of companies did exactly that. So they might be getting tariffed more if those two countries don't come to the table and negotiate those tariffs lower. They could end up getting hit harder than the tariffs that are out of China. Yeah. Trump tariffs exempt gold. We just read that. Sweden will continue to stand for free, open, and international trade. So this is the Swedish Prime Minister. And we were just talking about Sweden here, so I thought it was timely to bring this up.
Det var våra vänner i USA som en gång visade vägen för oss i Europa.
We got captions here.
För det är när Amerika räddade Västeuropa undan nazism och kommunism under och efter andra världskriget. De försvarade friheten på vår kontinent. Det var när samma frihet också utsträcktes till ekonomin som våra samhällen blev rikare. Människor såg sin tillvaro förbättras. Föräldrar såg sina barn få en framtid som de själva knappt vågat drömma om. Det ömsesidiga samarbetet genom fri handel har bidragit till fred, teknologiska framsteg och minskad fattigdom globalt. Ja, hela mänskligheten har fått det bättre. Det är fritt företagande och fri konkurrens som har lagt grunden för västerlandets framgång. Det är därför amerikaner kan lyssna på musik i svenska Spotify och vi svenskar kan lyssna på samma musik i amerikanska iPhones. Därför beklagar jag djupt att USA nu har slagit in på en väg där man vill begränsa handeln genom höjda tullar. Vi vill inte ha växande handelshinder. Vi vill inte ha något handelskrig. Det skulle göra våra befolkningar fattigare och världen på sikt farligare. Men Sverige och den svenska regeringen är väl förberedd för det som nu händer. Vi står på en stabil ekonomisk grund med statsfinanser i världsklass. Och i EU kommer jag fortsätta ta varje tillfälle för att vända den här utvecklingen. Min förhoppning och vårt mål är att vi genom förhandlingar ska kunna begränsa de tullar som USA nu har presenterat. Vi vill att vi tillsammans med USA hittar tillbaka till en väg där vi handlar och samarbetar så att människor i våra länder får det bättre. Sverige kommer fortsätta stå upp för fri handel och internationellt samarbete.
All right. No major policy out of there. This is probably an important chart to keep in mind in these coming months. Australian export top destinations. China, 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 China. And then US for sheep, beef. Japan for canola, UK for wine. Also, partly US for wine. So, much more reliant on Australian exports, especially agricultural exports for Australia. And then you can see Nike got hit, Lululemon got hit, and On Holding got hit. So all these apparel stocks got hit because a lot of them are either in China Cambodia, Vietnam. So this is the fact sheet from the Trump administration. Let's go ahead and see here. Trump will impose individual reciprocal higher tariffs on the countries with which the United States has the largest trade deficits. All other countries will continue to be subject to the original 10% baseline tariff. This will take effect April 9th. So we'll see if there's any negotiations for these countries to get that tariff negotiated away. These tariffs will remain in effect until such a time as President Trump determines that the threat posed by the trade deficit and underlying non-reciprocal treatment is satisfied, resolved, or mitigated. Hopefully that's on a country-by-country basis. Yeah, and then this is the section talking about what will not be subject to reciprocal tariffs, and here you can see bullion right there. So gold should be doing A-okay. For Canada and Mexico, the existing fentanyl/migration orders remain in effect and are unaffected by this order. This means the USMCA compliant goods will see a 0% tariff. Non-USMCA goods, non-USMCA compliant goods, we'll see a 25% tariff. Non-USMCA compliant energy and potash will see a 10% tariff. All right. Anything else here? He is the first president in modern history to stand strong for the hardworking Americans, asking for other countries to follow golden rule on trade. Treat us like we treat you. We'll see how that develops over the next week. U.S. companies, according to international estimates, pay over $200 billion per year in VAT. Foreign governments, a double whammy on U.S. companies who pay tax at the European border. European companies don't pay tax to the U.S. on the income from their exports to the U.S. All right. Counterfeit goods, pirated software, and theft of trade secrets. It's interesting that they put pirated software in there because the U.S. consumer base pirates a lot of stuff online. Okay. Prioritizing U.S. manufacturing. Let's see here. Okay. %50 on India. Wow. China's non-market policies and practices here, given China's global dominance in key manufacturing indices, decimating U.S. industry, is also kind of the U.S.'s fault for sending a lot of manufacturing over to China. It's been called out as a bad decision for a long time, so this is the effort to bring that manufacturing back to the United States. India imposes their own uniquely burdensome and or duplicative testing and certification requirements in sectors such as chemicals, telecom products, and medical devices that make it difficult or costly for American companies to sell their products in India. If these barriers were removed, it is estimated that U.S. exports would increase by at least $5.3 billion annually. China, Germany, Japan, and South Korea have pursued policies that suppress the domestic consumption of power of their own citizens by to artificially boost the competitiveness of their export products. Such policies include regressive tax systems, low or unenforced penalties for environmental degradation, and policies intended to suppress worker wages relative to productivity. And then they talk about South Africa here, Argentina. U.S. automakers face a variety of non-tariff barriers that impede access to Japanese and Korean automotive markets, including non-acceptance of certain U.S. standards, duplicative testing, and certification requirements, and transparency issues due to these non-reciprocal practices. The U.S. automotive industry loses out on an additional $13.5 billion in annual exports to Japan and access to a larger import market share in Korea. Monetary tariffs and non-monetary tariffs are two distinct types of trade barriers that governments use to regulate imports and exports. So all those are likely to be brought up in the tariff negotiations to bring down these U.S. tariffs based on how these countries want to negotiate with the U.S. All right. Yeah, this Janet Yellen comment was kind of funny because she's also the one who said inflation was transitory, right, alongside Powell during COVID. And she's taken that comment back and said, that probably wasn't a smart thing to say. So Janet has been saying somewhat smarter things recently, so we'll see if we actually see higher inflation in the US that isn't transitory. And we'll get that information over the next couple of CPI prints here. All right. Australian 10-year yields fall most since July last year amid safe haven demand. Yeah, spot gold remains stable on opening after Trump announces tariff spree because gold is not getting hit. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and check out how Euro's doing. Euro's holding up. Pound is holding up quite well too. Yield spreads are quite positive. Right now it seems on the pound. Yeah. Everything's moving positively there. New Zealand's getting hit at the moment. See how the yield spreads print here. Pretty mixed. Slightly negative. And I believe these should be flat out. Yeah, these are not improving well. Especially on the long-term and short-term part of the curves. The middle area of the curve is still fairly positive, so we'll see how well Australia holds out. These are just slightly positive, but negatively developing yield spreads for Australia. And dollar China, yeah. Check that out. Moving super, super, super high. And then on the CAD side, looks like yield spreads are still moving in favor of the Canadian dollar, but we're seeing a bit of a bounce here over the last couple of hours on the price. But we'll see how well the Canadian holds up here. And yeah, Japan's going to get hit especially hard on the automotive tariff side of things. So we'll see how this holds up. A lot of strengthening of the yen at the moment. A lot of strengthening of the yen. Go ahead and check out the daily spreads. Yeah, all negative. This is very positive for the yen here. So I expect to see continued yen strengthening here. And again, gold is doing A-okay. Wouldn't be surprised if we crossed 3,150 today. Yeah, 3,150 is this peak right here in the distribution for today. Yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see gold continue to rise from here, considering it's exempt from tariffs. But yeah, Tone. Yeah, I know. I was also late to the stream. I had a dead phone and I had to rush back home from a couple of delays, but net, we're here. And I think we've done a pretty good job of covering the developments that have just occurred. New Zealand 10-year yields dropped 10 basis points on post-tariff safe haven demand. Yikes. Probably has to do with mostly China getting hit, right? So you see China's currency weakening massively right here. And so just the relationship between China and Australia and New Zealand, they're getting hit too. About Australia and New Zealand, they're holding up. Looks like New Zealand's strength is holding up here, at least for the moment. And the dollar's weakening against the Swissy here. Looks like FX markets are trying to make the Swissy stronger to try and induce the SMB to try and consider if the government of Switzerland can't come to a deal on tariffs. Actually, let's see if Switzerland. Let's scroll down a bit. Swiss President Keller Sutter. The Swiss Federal Council takes note of the U.S. tariff decisions. I will quickly determine the next steps. So, waiting for news. Considering no more cuts are expected out of the SMB, this move for a stronger franc is putting Switzerland in an interesting position. Because from what I understand, the SMB said that they're open to intervening in the FX markets over just cutting their rates still. That's going to depend on how strong the Swiss franc gets from here. So we'll see if that story develops. Again, if there's something that gets negotiated with the Swiss and the US, they'll probably provide some relief to the franc. But net, you can see it's been effectively flat since about the second week of March. So no terribly huge spike in volatility here. Check out the yield spreads. Yeah, see how negative the yield spreads were during this trend, and now we're seeing a ramp up in negative yield spreads again. I'd be cautious of more downside here on dollar Swissy. And the pound seems to be gaining against the euro, but short-term yield spreads are improving for the euro against the pound. And euro is at 108. Let's go ahead and check out the yield spreads. Nope, these are still quite positive. So we'll see how that holds up. I'm not so sure that the EU will be able to negotiate in the next week a deal with the US to reduce the tariffs or keep the tariffs reduced. We'll see. They're not going to change their VAT system immediately. That is a huge legal hurdle. And there's a lot of people who argue that the VAT system isn't a barrier, a monetary barrier to trade. But the US, in their fact sheet today from the White House, says that it is. So it's going to be brought up in negotiations on tariffs. Let's go ahead and check out equities. Well, these markets are now closed. Let's check out Nvidia. Nvidia seems to be gapping down a bit. Yeah, Nvidia's down a bit. How about ARK? ARK got hit quite a bit. It's down $5. About 10% here in aftermarket. Ford is holding up. Again, Apple's still falling in aftermarket. It's down 7.5% right now. Remember, Apple does a lot of business with India and a lot of business in China. So they can get hit particularly hard here. Ooh, Chevron not doing so great. Stellantis, a lot of volatility. GM down net. Ooh, Disney got hit pretty hard. It's down about 4.8%, close to 5% so far. And the Australian stock market seems to be doing all right. It looks like it's about to make a new high here for the month. We're getting quite a bit here. Oh, that's just the Swiss government responding to tariffs. Switzerland flags importance of international law after tariff hit. The US would apply a 31% tariff on imports from Switzerland compared with 20% goods from the European Union and 10% from Britain, because this was one of the main things that Switzerland was afraid of, is being labeled a currency manipulator, just like Japan and China, and then having higher tariffs tacked onto them. All right, let's go ahead and see. Maybe there are some new live streams here from other world leaders. Some Republicans plan to rebuke Trump's tariffs. So this is what's going on in the U.S. Senate right now.
Trade, largest single U.S. export markets for goods. Every day, nearly 500,000 people and billions of dollars in goods and services cross that border. But I want to focus on Connecticut for the moment, because Connecticut demonstrates what will happen to America as a whole. And I represent the people of Connecticut, and this
Yeah, I agree with Marco here.
Will be catastrophic for Connecticut. Friends in Connecticut, listen to what these haphazard tariffs will do. Canada is Connecticut's single largest trading partner, accounting for 20% of our total trade in 2024, including 13% of our imports and
Yeah, we got more rate cuts from the RBA getting priced in. More interest rate cuts being priced into the Australian market, made worse by the RBA era in not cutting rates on Tuesday. It will have to play catch up from here big time. 50 basis points on May 20th, question mark. So we might see larger rate cuts. Yeah, check that out. Pretty negative hit here. Yeah, these yield spreads continue to worsen. Let's go ahead and check out this. Yeah, if we're going lower, we're talking just below the 62 handle here. Let's go ahead and slap on some timing dots. Yeah. Either this thing bottoms out around 62.20-ish in the next few hours here, later around Asia, or we end up guessing where the low comes in. Considering the negative move here on the yield spreads from these RBA rate cut increase odds coming through, this isn't a good look for future Aussie dollar prices.
20 employment all stand to see their livelihoods threatened if this tax is allowed. And it will ripple across Connecticut. It will reverberate through the country, to the presiding officer state, to Virginia, New York, Maryland, colleagues on both sides of the aisle. The cost of living in Connecticut will rise drastically. We already have one of the highest costs of living in the country. Taxing these goods will put an undue financial strain on individuals and families across Connecticut, but most important, on people who can least afford a higher tax. Our middle income and lower income members of the workforce, working people in Connecticut.
And this is a politician out of Canada. Tomorrow I'll announce my planned nation building and then, quote, wartime measures to Trump-proof Canada. That is quite combative out of the Canadians. And you can see Canadian dollar rebounding here. So we might get the stronger US dollar follow through after all. Whoa. Okay. All right, we got a comment here out of the set.
This at the same time that market participants, fiscal hawks, budget hawks in Congress are concerned about the deficit. How are you going to have this big reconciliation package?
Well, I think, as we've seen, there's a lot of room to cut spending. So I think, again, where Republicans have incredible unity is on the spending cuts, as we're seeing.
So when it comes to the timeline of all of this, I do notice that now reconciliation, it seems to be an agreement between the House and the Senate that they're willing to consider about raising the debt ceiling. So do you plan on getting this bill done before the X date, which the CBO is saying could be the middle of the summer or September?
Well, Anne-Marie, I think you just answered the question for yourself, because if debt ceiling is solved via reconciliation, then it has to be done before we hit the X date. And we're going to go onto the warning track sometime in May or June.
So that's when you plan to get this tax bill done?
That's a goal.
A lot of talk about fentanyl coming down from politicians here on X. Axios says intra-party concerns over optics and messaging are threatening support for Senate Democrats in the U.S., the resolution to overturn Trump's tariffs on Canada. And then you have guys here, Tim Shelley. Yeah. Let's see here. Do 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 do. All right. Well, it's a big win so far for the US dollar on rebounding here after the tariff announcements. We'll see if these all hold. These yield spreads are still insanely negative here. These are still very positive. And Australia and New Zealand are the two that are getting hit the most because of efforts also on China, as well as themselves. Oh, Canada and Mexico are exempt from reciprocal tariffs for now. That just came out about an hour ago. Oh, because of the USMCA. Yeah, that's right. All right, nothing else coming down the wire at the moment. It seems like people are mostly talking about US dollar. Oh, we got a comment here out of Carney. Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, Trump tariff announcement has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship. All right. So some positive comments out of Carney. So we're seeing hopefully we'll see Canadian dollar continue to go lower from here. At least the dollar CAD pair, that is. If we do go lower, I'd probably look for about another 150 pips lower by the end of the week. That's 141.50. Carney says we're going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. Now let's go ahead and check up on gold. How's that holding up? Gold pulled back a little bit. It seems to be holding up quite well. Ooh. Oil not doing so hot here. Oil's down roughly $2, $1.50. It's down 90 cents on the day. Oh, wow. Equities are falling even further. No? I mean, it did gap down. There is a limit at 5,315. A halt limit at 5,315 today. So if we go down here, the markets will halt. We got another comment here from Besant, this time on tariffs.
For someone who says that this money coming in is really a tax on consumers, what do you say?
I say a couple of things. One, we're seeing the CEO of Walmart is pushing back on his Chinese suppliers, and he is telling them they have to eat all the tariff increases. They're the largest retailer in America. I think 40 million Americans go into Walmart every week. We saw in Trump 1.0, prices didn't go up, and if we have that happening at the same time, we are able to use that income to provide President Trump's tax agenda: no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, excuse me, no tax on overtime, and making auto interest deductible for American cars. That's a home run for working class Americans.
Yeah. And for someone who says that this money...
Those are pretty attractive policies, frankly. Another comment here out of Sent. Another clip.
Are you preparing to negotiate with some of these trading partners before that tariff rate comes into effect on April 9th?
Well, I think there have been a lot of discussions, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see what would happen. What I would say, Anne-Marie, is I would advise none of the countries to panic. I wouldn't try to retaliate, because as long as you don't retaliate, this is the high end of the number. And I think the market could have certainty that this is the number barring retaliation. So we've got a ceiling, and then we can see if there's a different floor.
So you sound like you're ready for negotiation with a number of these partners. Has the European Union, has China, has India, have these countries reached out?
Well, they've all reached out, but it's going to be up to President Trump to see what he wants to do. I think the mindset might be to let things settle for a while. Their tariffs or non-tariff barriers have been on a long time, so we'll see where it goes from here.
Are you...
Yeah, note how he said non-tariff barriers. So he's looking for other changes other than just to allow U.S. businesses to actually go and do business and get access to the markets in these other countries. Bitcoin's only down 2%. Yeah, Bitcoin taking a bit of a hit here. Yeah, some people are saying, well, what's going on with this move? Wouldn't these tariffs cause people to move to Bitcoin to a flight for safety? Well, not if the US dollar is getting stronger. If the US, remember, this is Bitcoin dollar. So if the dollar is getting stronger, then Bitcoin is going to get weaker. But this doesn't look like the US dollar is getting stronger, does it? Wow. Yen. And just got hit so hard, man. 117 pips in the last 3 hours. Wow. What a move. Right, Evercore just released this chart here. This is the new effective tariff rate. So this has historically been the effective US tariff throughout history. And now this blue dot right here is with all the things announced prior to today. And this is everything. It's 29% tariff estimated. This is the highest in the last century, effectively. The highest tariff rate in the US in the last century, estimated with all the new stuff coming out today. I haven't seen a post out of Dutton on the tariffs yet. Yeah, the Liberal Party hasn't posted a whole lot yet out of Australia. Yeah, Coalition not doing a whole lot at the moment. Canada's Prime Minister says his country will retaliate against US tariffs. That should probably send this higher. Again, more retaliation means higher tariffs. We just listened to what Besant said, like, hey, this is the cap, and if you retaliate, these tariffs are going to end up higher. Getting into a trade war. Yeah, Canada will respond to U.S. tariffs on Thursday, says Carney. So, if they follow through and Canada does retaliate, that's probably going to send this pair higher. probably end up reversing these yield spreads. Yeah, these yield spreads are pretty negative still, but come Thursday, we could have some new information here. Let's see, anything else? All right. Now is a good time for requests. So if there's a particular chart or particular thing you want me to comment on, that would be a good time. Checking X for any more comments. A lot of people making strong calls that the S&P will be red tomorrow. Well, that's kind of interesting. Dojo, I had to dip out while prep for school tomorrow. Did you look at Mexican peso yet? No. Let's go ahead and check out peso. I believe MXN should be here. Peso seems to be doing A-OK on the day. Dollar is up against it. It dipped in the last hour of the trading day yesterday, and so far the US dollar has been making a bit of recovery. So net peso is doing okay. Now, rate cut odds for Australia did increase. So these yield spreads went from looking quite promising and bullish, and you can see that big fat top wick right here on the announcement of these tariffs, and then things getting sold off. Whipped against euro and yen too. Oh yeah. Yen is down about 100 some odd pips. Roughly about 180 pips. And euro seems to be bouncing around here. Seems to be doing a-okay. Pound looks like it's doing all right as well. It's mostly Australia and New Zealand that are getting hit the most. Let's check out the heat map here. So dollar is appreciating against Aussie, New Zealand, and CAD so far. The biggest loser seems to be the CAD and the yuan. However, the yuan is actually doing better against the Aussie at the moment. Euro seems to be doing okay, except against the Swissy and the yen. And the Swissy seems to be doing good against everything here, except for the yen. So the yen seems to be one of the bigger winners cross-currency at the moment. So you can check out all the yen pairs, and all the yen pairs are falling, falling, falling. All these are down like over 100 pips. Let's go ahead and hear this. The decision by the U.S. to impose 20% import tariffs from across the European Union is deeply regrettable.
The decision of the U.S. administration this evening to levy a tariff of 20% on all goods imported from the European Union. My priority and that of the government is to protect Irish jobs and the Irish economy. And we will work with our companies, multinational companies and Irish companies, to navigate the period ahead. We will work with our European Union colleagues in getting on a negotiation pathway with the US to limit the damage of these tariffs. We'll also work bilaterally with the US, pointing out the added value and the strength that Ireland has given to so many US companies who are located in Ireland and who export to the European Union and to Asia and across the world. So government will continue to work on behalf of the Irish people in the context of tonight's announcement to protect Irish jobs and the Irish economy.
So this is apparently going to be the worst trading day on the NASDAQ since 2022. Close to 5% move lower here. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni says U.S. tariffs are wrong. Besant says that the sell-off in U.S. equities is, quote, a Mag 7 problem, not a MAGA problem. Okay, this is just funny. The fuck? That's kind of funny. Yeah. Not a MAGA problem. That's kind of funny. Let's go ahead. Double check. Let's see if there's any new live streams from around the world of world leaders responding to the tariffs. Pulaver is holding a rally right now. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. Oh, we can listen to Mark Carney.
So President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system. Now, in doing so, he has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States. But the fentanyl tariffs still remain in place, as do the tariffs for steel and aluminum. As of this evening, the tariffs on automobiles will enter into force, and the U.S. has signaled that there will be additional tariffs in so-called strategic sectors, pharmaceuticals, lumber, and semiconductors. So we're in a situation where there is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. But the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians. We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy.
Starting tomorrow, the United
Okay. Sorry for the noise here. So this is the Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz.
United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary.
Look ahead to what might come. Stephen Poloz is back with me. He's a former Bank of Canada governor and current special advisor at Osler, Hoskin and Harcourt. Hello again. Thank you for listening to all of that and trying to help us make sense of it. Are you at all as surprised as maybe I felt? I think we were bracing for what appeared to be much worse. It doesn't sound like the worst case scenario, at least for Canada.
At least for Canada. What I appreciate is that there seems to be a degree of respect for USMCA. Been ignored throughout the 25% on steel, aluminum, and of course autos, which was reinforced again today. But the rest, for that comment we received from the Prime Minister after his phone call, which is, yes, after the election, whoever is in government, there would be a fulsome conversation, a negotiation around not just trade, but our security arrangements with the United States, a whole new package. And that seems to have been the substance of that conversation. So this leaves it there in that, someday in the future. But getting back to what it means for the world.
Yeah, I did want to ask you because those are some hugely significant tariffs on the EU, on China, on Japan, on Taiwan. My goodness.
Yeah, so, this is truly a big stagflationary shock for the world.
And what does that mean in layman's terms?
We always said it would be stagflationary. That means it would raise prices, inflation, probably, at the same time as it slowed economic growth. That's, from the 1970s, the term stagflation. And in some countries that are harder hit, you might expect more stag than inflation, such as Canada, a very trade-dependent country. Whereas maybe our inflationary parts would come mostly from whatever retaliatory tariffs that we use. Whereas in the U.S., it would be mostly inflation and maybe not much stag. But even already, the investment and housing and so on have already slowed quite significantly in the United States. So there's even talk about recession indicators flashing red in the United States already. So perhaps the president won't be satisfied with his initiative until he has created the greatest recession ever, or something like that from a global standpoint. During his presentation, he talked about how tariffs were in place after, up to World War I. And then we invented the income tax. And he suggested that that's where the Great Depression came from. And they tried to put tariffs back in place during the early part of the Great Depression, but it was too late to avoid the Great Depression. Such an inversion of economic history. I've never seen anything like it.
Fact check it if you could.
I guess.
And when it comes to, the other indication that he clearly made tonight that he has previously is the view that, when he talked about, for example, income tax, that he doesn't think that should be the means of raising revenue, that these tariffs will be a means of raising revenue. But my goodness, at what cost?
Well, they really will. I mean, even if they get negotiated down or there's responses from various countries to, in effect, invert reciprocity, I guess the word I want, maybe lower some of their tariff barriers, and that would maybe give a lower tariff in the United States. Perhaps that's the kind of process that would be envisioned. But even so, in the end, there will be a lot of revenue coming from some of these tariffs. And ask what would be the response. Let's say, you know, if you've bought a Barbie doll for one of your kids, I just looked on Amazon. I wasn't sure how much they cost. They cost $12, $15, $20. Is China then going to reshore Barbie doll production to the United States instead of making them in China and shipping them? I don't think so. And a 34% tariff, I think it was, for China would make a Barbie doll $15 or $16 or $25 for the deluxe one. I don't.
Okay, so this is interesting. People are trying to run the math on some of these tariffs. And this is what people are seeing. It appears that the tariffs charged to the USA plus currency manipulation and trade barriers column may be derived from U.S. trade deficit. For instance, if we have 136 billion of annual imports from Vietnam and 13 billion of exports for a deficit of 132 billion, that comes to 90%. And you can see Vietnam right there at 90%. I'm not sure if this is the case for all countries, but I have checked a few and the math seems to add up. We have 12.7 billion in annual imports from Cambodia and 226 million of exports for a deficit of 12.3 billion, which comes out to a 97% tariff. And you can see Cambodia right there, 97%. Switzerland exports 25 billion, imports 63 billion, creating a deficit of 38 billion. That's 61% tariffs charged to the US. And you can see that's roughly ballpark. I don't see where it says 60% there, yeah. So a lot of people are saying, oh, wow, so that's just how the tariffs are being calculated by deficit. South Korea's acting president, Han, tells industry minister to take on negotiations with the U.S. to minimize impact of tariffs. Han orders emergency support measures for businesses that will be impacted by U.S. tariffs, says the industry ministry. Let's see, those are Carney's statements. Looks like that is a frozen feed there. Yeah. See the thread below. It's not a, quote, discounted reciprocal tariff rate. It's a country's U.S. trade surplus divided by their U.S. exports. It's a complete joke is what these guys are saying. So tariffs charged to the U.S., USA discounted reciprocal tariff, and then trade deficit U.S. imports minimum 10%. And South Korea can get hit 50%. Reciprocal, a discount on reciprocal tariffs is 25% for South Korea right there. These are pretty high tariffs. It's going to force these guys to interact with the United States. Because I'm pretty sure none of these people actually want these tariffs to go through. So we're going to see a lot of news hit the wire over the next week in regards to all sorts of different countries trying to do negotiations for their tariffs. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility is definitely going to be in store, frankly, over the entirety of the next 2 weeks. This is going to be pretty hard trading. Because if you're not watching the news, and as soon as the news breaks, and then you know exactly how these policies impact specific assets, it's going to make trading really, really, really difficult. I mean, a few traders are straight out probably going to be taking a sabbatical here from trading for a bit until this volatility tones down a bit. Okay, let's go ahead and check for any new major stream announcements here. Albany's press conference. Okay, is this rally up and running now? They're singing the Canadian national anthem at this Pierre Poilievre rally. Why is the stream so crap? Technical problems with video originate at the source.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much, folks. We have an incredible evening ahead of us. Just before we move on, we
Yeah, this
have
is
some special guests. And I know
crap
we were cheering
crap
for them earlier,
looking
but I
stream.
candidates that are here in the room.
At least they say it's from the source and not from
Central,
CPAC.
We have Michael Barrett. Give it up for.
We got another statement here out of Kearney in Canada.
From Hastings, Lennox, and Addington.
During this crisis, we must act with purpose and force. My government will fight U.S. tariffs, protect Canadian workers and industry, and build the strongest economy in the G7.
Next from Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, Scott Reed. All right, and from the Bay of Quinte, we have none other than Ryan Williams.
Yeah, it's kind of unwatchable. Yeah, dollar just fell 1% against the euro. Yeah, it keeps bouncing around here. Again, I went ahead and I looked at the yield spreads. Yield spreads are positive. They flipped very, very positive on the announcement of tariffs at the end of the last trading day. So all these yield spreads are moving quite positively at the moment. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see more euro dollar appreciation from here. We'll have to see. Considering the EU has their most recent stimulus passed, and they've set higher growth expectations in Europe, while these tariffs are expected to potentially lower growth expectations, slightly increase inflation, maybe hurt employment in the US, we have to actually see the data come out that way in the United States before there's any super serious devaluation of the US dollar. But we'll be getting that information over the next 2 months as we settle in on what the final level of tariffs are for all these different countries and set clear expectations on how this is going to impact US consumers and businesses. But net, yield spreads seem to be pointing in the right direction. Australia and New Zealand are getting hit particularly hard at the moment because of China. So if you go to yuan, right, you can see dollar is appreciating against yuan quite strongly. Yeah. That negative impact is hurting Australia, for the moment at least, and New Zealand. We'll see if that actually picks up pace. I know rate cut expectations have increased for the RBA, so we'll see if there's more significant follow through. The Australians, the Prime Minister Albanese already said that they're not going to be doing reciprocal tariffs against the United States. So it seems like the current policy here, the current maximum tariff level is already set. At least that's what Besant said, is so long countries don't do any sort of retaliation, the tariffs that are announced today from the United States is the cap. And then negotiations will determine the floor, or how low the tariffs will go going forward. However, the negotiations are not just going to be about the tariff levels themselves. They are also going to be about non-tariff monetary and some fiscal policies of these other countries, preventing U.S. businesses from entering the markets of these countries that the U.S. just put tariffs on. So if these countries in these negotiations go to the U.S. say, hey, we want lower tariffs, the U.S. is going to say, okay, we'll lower the tariffs if you also lower your tariffs, but you also have to reduce these trade barriers for our businesses. And some countries don't really want to do that. So we'll see what those negotiations look like. Again, over the next week, we're going to be seeing that news come to the forefront, what those negotiations look like. There's probably going to be a lot of news over the weekend, so there's going to be plenty of weekend risk for all sorts of assets, depending on if there's any improvement to these negotiations. Now, if the last two announcements, U.S. tariff announcements, are anything to go by, countries are already primed and set to start these negotiations, and we'll see if there's any breakthroughs or agreements that do get made over the coming weekend here. So that then agreements can be signed and the floor on these tariffs can be reduced. But some of these trade barriers, these non-tariff trade barriers, are implemented by the government's legislature they were voted on, meaning that the government, whatever their legislature is, they're going to have to do another vote to reduce or remove these tariffs, or maybe the executive branch, the prime minister or the president of said country might have some kind of loophole or executive power to circumvent those laws and bring down those trade barriers to avoid the tariffs. We'll see. That might cause those leaders to be politically unpopular, as like caving into Trump or something. So we'll have to see how the negotiations develop. It's going to be pretty serious here. Whoa, all right. We got a whole list of names that are dumping post-market. Lululemon's down close to 10%. Intel 4%, Amazon 4%, Win 4%, HP 5%, Walmart 5%, Nike 6%, Apple 6.7%. Yeah, so a bunch of equities are gapping down here. Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Sebastian Gorka, goes on GB News. Let's see what Sebastian Gorka has to say.
There was an incredible moment in the British press earlier, Dr. Gorka, where it was stated that a free trade deal with Britain involves free speech in Britain. It's something that J.D. Vance spoke about, in particular, a protest by a Christian at an abortion clinic. How important is free speech to this whole deal, and why, actually, is America poking its nose in?
Well, I think it's important not just to bilateral relations, it's important to Western civilization. It's not a question of poking our nose into anything. A good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine for more than 20 years, texted me as soon as he saw that headline, and he said, you know, God bless President Trump. And that was a Brit. That was a friend of mine in the UK. Why? Because, yes, it is enshrined in our Constitution, the First Amendment, the freedom of speech, but I don't think it should be a uniquely American level of freedom that comes to the expression of speech. I think that should be something that any member of Judeo-Christian civilization recognizes. So this isn't about politics. It's not about, you know, getting your nose under the tent. It's about the values upon which our civilization is founded.
And Dr. Gorka, do you share that concern that free speech in Britain is in peril?
Well, look, I see things across the continent and in the UK that give me pause for thought and do not really represent the European or even British standards I knew as a person who was born in the UK. The idea that people get in trouble for social media postings and that the police are more concerned with those kind of issues than actual physical crimes being committed. I think Europe writ large has to step back and just assess what it has done to the rights of individual citizens in the free expression of their political or religious beliefs. So yes, as somebody who was born in the UK, I'm a tad concerned, to put it mildly, Martin.
So this isn't just non-tariff economic policies that Gorka is talking about, at least in regards to tariffs on the UK. They're saying, hey, you need to enact civil changes. Wow. You know, this is the exact opposite of the idea that, oh, we're going to go ahead and send a bunch of aid to all these countries. The United States has effectively used the CIA in this way to exude some kind of soft power and say, okay, we're going to send you all this money if you enact these policies or don't enact some of these policies. Trump is kind of doing the reverse. They're taking away all this money that was given to them and putting on additional penalties via these tariffs, saying, okay, we're not giving you money to make these changes to your economy or to open up these routes for U.S. businesses to do business in your economy. We're going to do things reciprocally. So if you don't treat us well, you can just forget doing business. Or if you want to do business, it'll be very expensive until you change. Which is a very, very strong position, to put it lightly. So Bloomberg here, a tariff loophole that allowed packages worth as much as $800, like the de minimis, from China and Hong Kong to enter the U.S. duty-free will end on May 2nd, the White House says. So Temu ain't going to be so happy about that. We'll see how Temu responds to that. U.S. short-term interest rate futures rise. Traders see nearly equal chances of a fourth Federal Reserve rate cut this year versus previously pricing in 3 cuts. So odds of a Fed rate cut coming in just went up. That's especially if growth slows down enough. Okay. So no crazy news out of that. I believe we have a stream somewhere around here. Oh, right here.
When I turned
Working
19,
stream.
I left Montreal, moved to Ottawa. I took a student loan so I can put.
All right, we want to see when Paul Revere comes on. Go ahead and close all those tabs. We don't need these tabs open now either. Yeah, so far, yield spreads are pointing in the right direction of US dollar weakness at the moment for a series of assets, not every asset. We'll see how Aussie and New Zealand fare, but they're getting hit because of the hits also on China. Oh, Mike Pence. The old vice president from Trump's first term responded. Remember, he's anti-Trump now. Trump tariff tax is the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. These tariffs are nearly 10x the size of those imposed during the Trump-Pence administration and will cost $3,500 per year to American families. Advancing American Freedom Foundation. We'll keep an eye on that name going forward because it's tied with Pence. Trump tariff tax is the largest peacetime tax hike in U.S. history. I mean, if you're just looking at the tariffs in isolation, sure, but there's all these other tax cuts that Trump is doing to offset these. That's the promise. And hardly anyone's listening to Pence nowadays, frankly. He's kind of persona non grata in Trump's circle. Costa Rica to open dialogue with U.S. over tariffs. All right, let's go ahead and get a new album set up here. Music seems pretty quiet. There we go. All right, so far Euro's still on its way higher. Yield spreads are completely positive. Yeah, this outside of the 10 and the 20 and maybe the 10, all these yield spreads are in ascending order by lag. So this is quite positive here for the euro. We'll see how well they keep things up. All right, Carney is up.
Ready to build some homes for a change. Promise. Remember that promise? Rebuild our military so that we can be a true sovereign nation.
Let's go ahead and pull up Canada. There's static in the audio here from the live stream.
I need your help. If you believe that we need change in putting Canada first, then I need you to elect the great Brian Patterson as the next member of Parliament for Kingston. There he is. Come on up here. Come on up here. Here he is, the mayor. Give it up for this guy. He's the guy. Three-term mayor known for cutting red tape, keeping costs down, running a tight ship, standing up for his people, always being there. The man who answers...
Oh, we got something a bit more important here. We got Hassan giving a comment here. National Economic Counselor, Dr. Kevin Hassett. In the 15 years after China entered the World Trade Organization, the typical family's increase in welfare was $5.50 per year because we were losing jobs and towns were being destroyed.
The typical family only made $80 cumulatively. So when China entered the World Trade Organization, everybody told us how wonderful it was going to be because we're going to get all these cheap goods and everybody's welfare was going to be so much better. You know, if you go back and look at the 8 years of President Bush and the 8 years of President Obama, do you know that over those 16 years that the typical family only made $80 cumulatively? So their increase in welfare was $5.50 a year about over the 15 years after China entered the WTO. So there was no gain in real income because while we were getting the cheap goods, we were losing jobs, destroying cities, destroying towns, and so on. And President Trump announced in a very historic action today that that's going to end, that we're going to create jobs in America, we're going to make stuff again here in the U.S., we're going to make real wages go up. We're never, ever, ever going to see like the Bush-Obama years where we get $5 a year of increased income because China's taking all of the business away from us.
Real median income
when China...
All right. Let's go back to Carney here.
What's the people?
Not Carney, Poliver.
McDonald. And he said, I'd like to take that man's place. And McDonald said, it's too late. They already nailed the coffin shut. Oh, if you don't laugh, you cry, right? You know, this city is a very special place. They call it the Limestone City because it's literally made of limestone, the most beautiful limestone structures anywhere in the world. Great Fort Henry, not far away, a real fortress and a symbol to resistance against potential American aggression, isn't it? It's a reminder that we are a peaceful, friendly, kind people, but never mistake our kindness for weakness. We stand up for ourselves and we put our country first.
We got the Canadian dollar here. That's the asset that's moving on the chart at the moment.
John A. Macdonald said, whatever you do, adhere to the Union. We are a great country and shall become one of the greatest in the universe if we preserve it. And so we must work every day and in every way, not just to preserve the country that we have, but to the promise that it has made to each and every one of us. That's the two-way street that the Canadian promise represents. Yes, you get the promise made to you that hard work will get you a great life and that you can do anything you want. But in exchange, you have to stand up and fight to make sure that promise is available to everyone else. The promise was made to me when I was born to a 16-year-old single mom who put me up for adoption to 2 school teachers. And they taught me that it didn't matter where I started, I could climb to the tops of the tallest peaks if I worked hard at it. It's the same promise made to my wife when she came here as a refugee. This country has given us everything that we have. And we, our family, believes we owe it to the country to give back, to fight for the country that we inherited from those who came before us. That ultimately is what the great limestone represents. It doesn't fade away. It resists the harsh elements. It can even stop cannonballs. It is so solid, it's like a fortress. And that is the nature of our country. We must become an economic fortress capable of standing our ground and protecting our future. Après la décennie perdue des libéraux, le Canada coûte plus cher, on est plus pauvre.
I know I was doing it in French.
Pour les Américains.
Let's see, anything else new coming down the wire here? Yeah, more people talking about how the tariffs are calculated based off the deficit ratio here.
The same liberal advisors.
And now he's just going on his political stuff. He's not doing anything tariff related. Oh, I gotta bounce, Joe. Thank you for the stream. I'll catch up with the rest in the morning. Good fortune trading as ever. Some nice moves tonight. Yeah, some pretty volatile shocks. I was expecting dollar to strengthen, so I got out, but guess what? Yield spreads pointed in a new direction, so I'm in on the new direction. That's just how it goes. Okay, I think I'll follow you, Harold, in your footsteps and call it here. We've been going for about 2.5 hours, just reviewing news and the latest developments. I'm glad I was still able to get here in time to see everyone's reactions to Trump, because I got in at like the last 5 or so minutes of Trump's announcement. So it's been pretty interesting watching the move since that, and then taking a trade on stream again. All right, So with that all said, you can go into the description here on YouTube. If you want to hang out with me here for the rest of the day on Discord, you can. Let's go ahead and hide this. There's the general chat. Here's our research forum. We got the Trump Watch thread here. So any new comments out of Trump. Outlooks coming out. This is going to be a big week for outlooks. Central bank commentary, economics, geopolitics, Trump 47 tariffs, Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Gaza, Canadian federal election, Australian federal election. There's a bunch of other election threads that are here that we are going to be getting new information on for sure. Okay, so if you guys want to hang out and focus on doing some trade research with me, or if you want to go ahead and share your own trades in these trade log threads, go ahead. Hop on in, share what it is you can find. So with that all said, we'll go ahead and say thank you all for watching. I'll see you in tomorrow's stream. Let's go ahead real quick. Check out the stream schedule. We have jobless claims and ISM services and Japan household spending. That's what we got tomorrow. And that will be 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern. So I'll see you guys then tomorrow. Alrighty. It was a very, very good stream. Very productive stream. And believe it or not, now, just as we're getting into the end of the stream, profitable stream for me, at least. Very, very nice to see. And no, all I did is I just clicked and put the drawing on the chart. This doesn't actually represent the stop or the take profit. Alrighty. I'll go ahead and see you guys in a bit. Thank you all very much for watching. And again, if you've watched this far, you're probably already subscribed and liked and all that. But yeah, I'll see you guys in a bit.